Kabaddi on the other flip side is kind of like this. It worked from season one, day one, and so suddenly you've got 3x of the football viewership. Revenues still need to be scaled. I think we still need to unlock a lot of revenue potential. There's a lot that, in our minds, the league needs to also do to unlock that potential as well. So a few challenges there in terms of conflicts within. But from a sport perspective, Kabaddi is flown. Right? And I think bang for buck, what you get on Kabaddi versus even what you get on cricket is massive because you're getting 1/3 the viewership and you're paying as a brand 1/10.
Okay.
So bang for buck value for a brand, I think is amazing when it comes to a Pro Kabaddi versus even an IPL.
This week's Paisa Vaisa episode is powered by Bajaj Finserv Mutual Fund, our education partner for an exciting new series, Wealth Creation Simplified. In this special series, we are diving deep into how young investors can build long-term wealth through smart investing, milestone-based financial planning, and mutual funds. All broken down in a way that's simple, actionable, and relevant. We've got an incredible lineup of guests, including Nimesh Chandan, CIO of Bajaj Finserv Mutual Fund, Kushal Lodha, Vivek Kaul, and Aparajita Sharma, who will be sharing their expert insights on navigating economic uncertainty, the power of compounding, behavioral investing, and aligning investments with your biggest life goals. Folks, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, and today's episode is on sports. I love this. This is a part of a sub-series on how businesses work. Sports franchise, sports management, and much more. My guest, I love this, is a multifaceted, multi-career person, Suhail Chandhok, co-founder of Elevate India Sports and its popular Yuva Kabaddi series. He's also CEO of Mumba that houses Kabaddi, table tennis, and chess, with more on the way. And this is just half the description. Suhail, welcome to Paisa Vaisa.
Thanks, Anupam.
It's fantastic to have you here.
No, great to be here. I think it's going to be a fun.
I hope so.
45 minutes, hour and a half, whatever you want. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun.
I just have to start with your journey. Like, I'll just drop the word journey and I'll leave it there because, my audience would not know, but I've read your interviews, I've read your profile. I don't think I've had such a person on our show who's done so many different things.
It wasn't planned, trust me. the up and downs of this journey were not planned, but yeah, I think
as someone
a journey is how you put it. Yeah.
As someone who's from the markets, who's used to ups and downs in the market, that's one thing. Ups and downs in life and career is a different thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. I think, I always joke about it with my co-founder who kind of had this regimented IIT, IIM, McKinsey into startup story. Mine is the non-IIT, non-IIM, non-McKinsey, non-planned life. But look, it's been a life in sport. My family's been in sport for a long time. My dad, grew up in motorsport. We come from Chennai and Madras, where I think sport is integral to a lot of us. But, they allowed me to live this life in sport. My brother, of course, went on to be in Formula One and built a life in sport himself. But for me, it was always, how can I do something in sport? And I guess for me, the change happened when you spend 15 years trying to sort of build to one goal of playing professional cricket. That happened. You're on that cusp of it. You're with an IPL squad. You've got that contract in front of you. And then when that goes overnight, you then have to rejig your life. And I think that's, 2014 was, or 2010, 2012, around that time was when I think a lot of changes happened because of my knee surgeries back then. And then, I think it's just, every time it's felt like, life is comfortable, boom, there's a hit, but I feel today that I think if all of those hits didn't happen and I had to keep changing what I was doing, I wouldn't kind of be where I am today with a lot of really cool experiences, very different, unique years of my life, very challenging ones at times, but it's been a journey and one I don't think I would change anything much.
I just realized one thing. Does sports teach you resilience?
Massively. And this is why I always tell people, right? Forget playing professional sport. Just play sport. At any level, play sport because you learn how to lose. You learn how to come back. You don't have an option. You can score 100 one day, you can win a race one day, you could, win a Grand Slam one day, and the next day you'll be out in round one or be out for a duck or whatever else, and you learn to fight back. I think, that I speak to a lot of youngsters today. There are also beautiful stories from the youngsters today, but there's a lot of stories of a lack of fight, resilience, and the first chance of fight or flight, it's flight rather than fight. Yeah. And I think sport, you don't have that option. You have to fight. Otherwise, it's going to leave you behind and you're done.
Yeah, because, something like a knee injury is debilitating.
Yeah.
And you're on
mentally
track.
As well, yeah.
You've, 3 generations of of people in your family who've done sports, and here you're facing that. You just walk me through what happened, before you were with RCB, I believe, playing with Anil Kumble.
Yeah, who's a really good friend now, weirdly enough, yeah.
Yeah. So just that, if I were to just take
Yeah.
that thing and talk about that.
And I think that was 2010, right? I think in the precursor to that, 2009, September is when I actually joined RCB in the lead up to 2010. I was with them during that Champions League phase, was in camp with them in November 2009. In the lead up to that, I had a brilliant couple of seasons in Australia and in England as well. So that's when Ray Jennings, the coach there, spotted me and had the opportunity to come and train with them. Anil Bhai being captain there was for me a dream come true. Growing up as a leggy and a batter, I remember I'll still never forget it. The first bowler I was facing in the nets at RCB, there was Kumble, and the first couple of balls I was like, shit, Anil Kumble is bowling to me. And then you're thinking, no man, you're at the same level now, you need to play, switch on, So it was a very cool moment. But then for that to kind of leave in a way, it's the one regret I have in my life, that I didn't fulfill my potential as a cricketer, because 2010 it would have been great to finally have that break, and 2010 Jan was when I had my first knee surgery while I was playing in Chennai actually, and normal slide, pick up and throw as we do 10,000 times on the field. Slid, turned, picked up and snapped my ligament.
Split second.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you slide, pick up, turn, and you feel it go. And as soon as you know, it's just hanging there. You can't move it. Actually, Lakshmipati Balaji was on the field, and he was the guy. I was playing against him, and he's the guy who actually recommended the surgeon and sent me across. And a lot of thanks to the guys that helped there. But my rehab process was bad. I didn't have the knowledge back then that I have today. So a lot of decisions I think I look back on and think I could have done things differently. So a lot of regret, I think, in terms of the cricketing side of it and playing, and that's why I don't believe anyone that says they don't have regrets in life. I think a lot of learnings I could have done better. Having said that, I don't think maybe I'd be sitting here with you with the various facets to my life if that had gone the same way, if that had taken that single direction of playing. So
I'm sure you learned a lot of lessons from that. I leave the regrets part, that's always there.
Yeah, of course.
But you learned a lot of lessons. What happened next?
I mean, I think what happened next, unfortunately for me, was just a quiet time. I think I didn't want to see anybody. I lived underground in my own space, even though I was living with my parents at the time, just went inwards. And then snapped out of it, I think, 2 years later. It took a while because you wonder what next, right? You've dedicated so long to finally getting that break and you're there. But then when I kind of sort of rejigged my life a little bit, did random things. I started my own sports PR company with a cousin of mine that was going really well, but it didn't kind of feel fulfilling.
Okay.
Did a movie in 2014.
What was that movie about?
So this was actually with Ajit, who's an absolute superstar.
The Ajit.
The Ajit.
Who just came out of racing.
Yes.
That guy.
Yes, that guy.
Oh my God. Okay.
So weirdly, I mean, I did a lot of theatre in school and university and stuff like that. And I did a couple of short films, and I wasn't going to do anything with it. Friend of mine back then, and I shot it. And then my brother and my cousin were like, just put this up, man, on YouTube. It's hilarious.
Okay.
Just put it up. Ended up putting it up. His wife saw it. Ajit's wife saw it. Then he called me all of a sudden and said, hey, Suhail. And firstly, I thought it was some random Ajit
Prank.
who played cricket with me. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So I had no idea. I was like, hey, Ajit, who Ajit? And I thought it was a prank after that. So weirdly enough, this led to one more thing. I did a screen test with the team. And then, I was in a very why not phase of my life, and I'm glad I did because the journey of spending 100 days with him, with Tamanna, with unbelievable cast, unbelievable star cast, and to spend time with them, with him, he's an absolute gentleman. I think Ajit as a human being, very, very good person. He's become a dear friend. We share a love for bikes and riding.
Just for my trivia angle, was he always into cars at that time, racing?
He was into bikes at the time. He was also into cars. There's a motorsport background to him as well. He did a lot of racing. And I think maybe he missed it. And I caught up with him recently when he was about to go do this GT series as well. Just really fun guy. And, I think, he's a normal guy who unfortunately doesn't live a life of privacy, unfortunately, So when he does get that and when he gets to vibe with somebody on a similar level, I think he enjoys it.
Wow.
We did random rides and we would ride late at night or early in the morning to avoid people, and it was a cool time. It was a very cool time.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Next
was the interesting shift, and I think the biggest shift in my life. I think 2014, after I did the film, there was a few other film offers and I could have continued that journey, but 2014, I was with a friend in Bombay and she actually was going to Star Sports for an audition.
Okay.
I said, you know what, Star Sports, cool, man. I just want to come see the studio. Happened to go there. They asked me, hey, Suhail, you're done with your cricket. Do you want to do an audition? And that's, I think, where life changed. I didn't even know what an audition was. I spoke about sport for 3.5 minutes. cricket, motorsport, tennis, whatever I could think of,
Yeah.
comes naturally, so did that and didn't hear back from them for 3 months. I said, okay, whatever. 3 months later, they said, hey, management loved your interview and your
Wow.
audition. Can you come back?
So now we've got Suhail Chandhok, the broadcaster.
The broadcaster.
Okay.
And I think that's where life changed for me a lot,
Yeah.
right? In terms of why didn't I think of this earlier? It comes naturally. So for the next 8.5 years, I joined Star. I was with them for 8.5 years exclusively. Since then, I've become a freelancer. Along the way, met my now co-founder at Elevate India Sports. We talked Kabaddi a lot. Kabaddi was one of my first assignments at Star in 2014.
When the league opened up?
When no one else wanted to do it.
Oh.
2014, everyone was like, it was literally, I remember at Star at the time, everyone was kind of laughing about it, yeah. Saying, what is next? Gilli Danda League? Ab kya hoga? You know, and I said, you know what? I want my foot in the door in cricket commentary and all that, but I can't yet. I'm a nobody in the world of broadcast. So you know what? Guys, I'll learn a new sport. Let's do it.
Okay.
And it was I'm so glad again that why not, and let's do it. Let's take a stab at it. Did Pro Kabaddi. Ended up then on the back of that, they liked my work and work ethic and ended up doing that year hockey, the Indian Super League football, Kabaddi, cricket and all the rest. And it just opened up, everything else. And the world became my oyster in the world of broadcast. And, touch wood, I'm very thankful to the people that gave me that first break in that
Very
sense.
interesting, right? Because I've been to a Pro Kabaddi match at NSCI in Burley.
Had fun?
Energy is insane.
Exactly.
You don't get it.
Yeah.
Like if you're watching it on the outside, you don't get it. But if you're seeing it, it's the intensity and the energy.
You're absolutely bang on. One of the things I saw actually that today also, it gives me goosebumps actually talking about it, because today Kabaddi is cool again, right?
Yeah.
But you think of our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation rather, and they played Kabaddi growing up. So for them, they're back watching Kabaddi.
Yeah.
The kids today find Kabaddi cool, so they're there.
Yeah.
And then beach mein jo hai, the generation is the kebab mein haddi generation. So now you've got 3 generations turning up to watch Kabaddi, and I think it's 40 minutes of action-packed entertainment. So how
Just
can you
40
not?
minutes. That's just one half of a football match.
Exactly.
And you have a result.
And you don't get a 0-0 here. so you're getting a proper game.
Okay. What next? So
Broadcast continued as it does today. I enjoy it. I have taken a step back in terms of the amount I do in the year. I'm no longer exclusive with anyone, so it gives me the freedom to do other stuff. And the other stuff includes Elevate India Sportz, which, we transitioned out of Kabaddi Adda back then, which was a digital-only company. We've now completely changed our direction as a company, changed our journey, restarted a new company in Elevate, and we now run the Yuva Kabaddi series. We've got more IPs coming in the world of Kabaddi. And then I had the opportunity to actually join a couple of large sports houses. And at the same time, actually, Ronnie, who happens to be my father-in-law later in life,
Oh my, okay.
He said, look, if you're going to go join these guys, you know what? We need someone to actually run our sports portfolio.
Yeah.
Would you be keen? And I initially said no. And then at a later stage, actually, when the time was right, where I felt also I had grown the startup out to a place where I felt I was secure in how I'm running a business.
Yeah.
Turned around and said, you know what, I actually think I'm the right guy for this. And we set very nice, clear boundaries. And, very thankful to him that he realizes that on the sports side, I know what I'm doing. He's always around for business advice, which you can't ask for too many better people, I think. So it's a really nice amalgamation. Massive challenges, because I think the expectation is high that I put on myself. I've always wanted to run sports teams in my life. So it's been a nice transition to being a co-founder of a startup, but also then becoming a CEO of a company. And I think the pressure of doing it with someone like Ronnie and doing a legacy team like Mumba is the big pressure. But to have already now been into the playoffs for the first time in the last 5 years means that we're hopefully taking steps in the right direction.
Yeah. So I just want to recap this, okay? Cricketer.
Yeah.
If, or actor.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was photographer in between, by the way, somewhere in there as well.
Or a DOP or something, right? Okay. Broadcaster. Okay. Or at least, on-screen host or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, broadcaster, commentator, presenter, yeah.
And entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is the right word, right?
Yeah.
So now full-time entrepreneur or still dabbling in...
No, still dabbling. I do think there's validity in it. A lot of people ask me, and I actually, we're in the middle of a fundraise at the moment, and, a couple of potential investors have said, so how do you divide your time? Are you going to be full-time here? I said, actually, I'm not going to be full-time, because firstly, broadcast happens largely at night. And I think, therefore, as someone who has insane amounts of energy, I'm happy to work in the day on my other stuff and go out and do broadcast at night. I started this morning playing paddle at 7 a.m. We're sitting here at 11:30 a.m. I will continue on to go to Thane this afternoon to do the ISPL as a broadcaster. And in between, I'm running calls on Mumba stuff and everything else. So I love it.
Tennis ball. It's like, even it's again one of those things that I thought, but again I saw it and I was like, I'm hooked on. I want to watch this.
Yeah.
What's it about?
So again, credit to Sachin and the MCA and everyone else. I think it gives dreams fulfillment, right? You've got kids who are playing tennis ball cricket on the streets. You've taken them to the stadium. Why not? And when they spoke to me and they said, look, we'd love for you to come on as a commentator and presenter, I said, yeah, you know what? This could be cool. I'm loving it. Good team, fun.
I saw this, I don't know what it was exactly. It was cricket and it was tennis ball. It was at Bandra Reclamation with TV stars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the rules were all over the place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, there's a lot of stuff going on and I will get to it because I think there's a lot of randomness going on in the world of sport.
Okay.
Not all of it is valid. And I think there's a bit too much in terms of the league format as well. And I think it needs to be dialed down to actually have some seriousness. So that also, I think, whether it's brands, whether it's sponsors, whether it's TV broadcasters, can actually pick and choose because you don't want to make fools of the audience as well. I think it's very important that sport takes certain directions where there's a seriousness to it as well. So you don't lose the core sports viewer because today I think you can't be switching on every day and finding something absolutely random. So yeah, I think there's a lot of randomness too.
I want to just ask this before we go into the business part. Sports as a business. Sports has become an experience. Like you would go to the movies.
Correct.
In the old times, you would go to the circus.
Absolutely.
Spectacle, and it's live.
Yeah.
That's the biggest difference between
unscripted drama.
Yeah.
We hope unscripted for the large part.
For the large part, yeah. So that becomes one draw itself.
Yeah.
How do you view, if you were to explain sports as a business to our audience, whether it is how a sports business franchise works, how would you do it? Like sports as a business?
So I guess let's split it into a couple of things, right? There's one from a league perspective and one from a sports franchise perspective.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm on kind of both sides. On the startup side, I'm on the league side of things.
Yeah.
On the Mumba side, I'm on the franchise side of things, right? And I think, thankfully, therefore, there's a lot of co-learnings that come across. From a league perspective, there's a few things. Firstly, owning the IP, right? Like the BCCI and the IPL, or like us and the Yuva series and the other IPs that we will own as well, or Mashal and Star and Pro Kabaddi. You own the IP, and therefore you have the right to sell franchises. So you earn revenue as a league from the franchises you sell, whether it's the IPL at 7,000 crores as we saw recently, to a Pro Kabaddi league which is far less, to maybe a state-run league, right, which could be a crore and a half as a franchise fee goes. On top of that, then your next revenue stream is the broadcast. And if you back your league well enough, you're going to earn broadcast revenue, which is the largest piece of the pie. As we now know, the IPL is 48,000 crores in revenue, which is the biggest chunk, right? I mean, you've seen per team revenues go from 300 crores in FY23 to now already, I think, 700 crores in FY24, right? Per team. And that's just on the back of that massive media rights deal for the next 5 years. So that's the bigger chunk. Then you've got central revenues, which is all your sponsorship, also inclusive of the broadcast, but all other sponsorship that you see everywhere across the board, plus TV sponsorship, etc., if that's a cut of the share that comes to you as well. And then you've got individual jersey sponsors, right? So you'll see every jersey that CSK or a Mumbai Indians or us at Mumba will have comes at a commercial value. So that's kind of the franchise side of it. So from a league perspective, you do a split rights. It kind of might be 50-50 in terms of all the earnings that you get, and then you split the rest across all the teams. Across all the teams. And then you've got the franchise side of it.
So before we get to the franchise, just to understand the league part, does the government get involved in this?
Well, federations potentially, right? So like an IPL would ideally have to go to the BCCI and pay them rights to own an IPL. Like Mashal, as an entity, would have to go to the AKFI, the federation body of Kabaddi.
Similarly, pay them. Badminton, table tennis, all of that.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is where in India it's sad because a lot of federations are fighting amongst themselves, and therefore there's multiple federations. So a lot of leagues have suffered, right? Be it the badminton league, be it boxing, be it volleyball that's been in a bit of a muddle as well.
Soccer's been on for a long time.
But football's got a federation. I think football has other challenges, and I think the biggest
sure.
challenge with football is viewership. Right, I think when your eye is so tuned to FIFA World Cups and La Liga and Premier Leagues, suddenly to watch the brand of Indian football, I think unfortunately that's why.
So you think there's already so much of football happening which is accessible to us.
That quality.
At that quality, yeah.
Right, and suddenly the quality is dialed down, which is why I think unfortunately the ISL has run for such a long time, but I think viewership metrics are so low that it is a tough one. And Parth Jindal has spoken about how they're losing 40-50 crores a year. Yeah, there's a lot of challenges.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Right, so I think the good thing is it's backed by Reliance, it's backed by the Ambani family. There is a long-term play to it, and so they're really backing it, right? And hopefully there'll be a bigger play to that. Kabaddi on the other flip side is kind of like this. It worked from season one, day one, and so suddenly you've got 3x of the football viewership. I think revenues still need to be scaled, and I think we still need to unlock a lot of revenue potential. There's a lot that in our minds, the league needs to also do to unlock that potential as well. So a few challenges there in terms of conflicts within. But from a sport perspective, Kabaddi is flown, right? And I think bang for buck, what you get on Kabaddi versus even what you get on cricket is massive because you're getting 1/3 the viewership and you're paying as a brand 1/10.
Okay.
So bang for buck value for a brand, I think is amazing when it comes to a Pro Kabaddi versus even an IPL.
Okay. Now franchise.
Right? Yeah. So franchise earns revenue from, again, the broadcast deal. Sizable there, and that's why we saw that revenue kick going forward. So the franchise earns revenue from the league itself because what the league shares, as I said, broadcast rights, central revenue pool comes back to the teams, and it's split across whether it's 6 teams, 8 teams, 10 teams, 12 teams, split across all the franchises. Then you've got jersey sponsorship. So each of your spots on your jersey goes to
a certain
value. IPL sponsors, I think, a Mumba Indians, for example, has, I think, 40 crores a year on the front of chest. Again, Kabaddi is about 1/10 that value to give you an indication of where that's at. You then sort of prorata the rest of the spots basis the amount of time spent that you get on air as well. Longer the time spent on air, of course, more eyeballs, more brand value, and that's sort of how it works. Then you've got your expenses in terms of your franchises, your franchise fee that you pay to the league, your player purse that you pay as well. But then the revenue comes back in from ticket revenue. Obviously, for a cricket stadium, far more. For a Kabaddi stadium, less, and also dependent on what you're paying. So what you pay for the rental of your venue versus what you're getting back in ticket revenue.
What is the ticket prices roughly for Kabaddi?
It changes. When we were at the Dome at the NSCI, your VVIP tickets are still quite high. It was about 7,000 rupees. But your lowest tickets are at, $400.
Okay.
So, and now we're kind of trying to find a middle ground. You still also VIP at 2,500. Corporate tickets go as well to a large extent. So we're kind of trying to sort of find that sweet spot. I think it's still evolving. But also I think we had to go higher on those price points because of what we were paying as a Bombay franchise to an NSCI Dome versus, let's say, what a Pune is paying in Balewadi or what Jaipur is paying somewhere else or what Patna might be paying in Bihar.
Economics are different.
Completely different, right? So that's one aspect of it. And then I guess the next chunk is how can you unlock digital revenues? How can you unlock monetization in other ways? How can you do partnerships with brands as well? So that kind of gives you an overview of the league and the franchise side of it, hopefully.
Okay. Players.
So players is very simple. You have a player purse. In Kabaddi, the player purse has gone up to 5 crores. So the players, whether it's an auction, whether it's a draft, if it's a draft, I actually really like the draft system because players are capped. There's no ability to kind of go up against a team. Whereas, I think when the auction model steps in, unless there's a very mature model, there's always this power that a player commands where even if you treat them really well and there's a loyalty aspect, you can lose it overnight, right? For example, say I found a player, and this has happened, I'm giving you true use cases, right? I found a random player in the middle of nowhere through the Yuva Kabaddi series actually. Found a player, bought him at the auction that nobody else wanted at 10 lakhs. The guy has a tremendous season. Next year he comes and tells me, sir, if you don't pay me 1 crore rupees, I'm going to the auction. Now, what do you do?
Obviously.
Right? Whereas if you have capped numbers, let's say if the guy goes up a category, you know that this is your worth. Right? And I think it'll kill a lot of issues that happen across a few sports. And I think this is something that needs to be addressed a little bit. I still think the draft model is a better model than an auction model. The auction, of course, makes for the razzmatazz of an auction day and all of that. But I still think there's a reason why the NFL, the NBA, all of them stick by a draft model, right? There's a lot of
How do you
merit.
decide? I mean, to invest in existing players or build new talent? Where does that? Is there?
It depends on the ethos of your team, and I think I've taken a very bold call at Mumba to go with form over reputation. We've kind of gone with a much younger route, developing players in house, trying to do the long term, prospect of developing players and finding players who really value what you give them and how you develop a culture within a team. So look, you have to get players that buy into that culture. Very tough, because at the end of the day, there are going to be players that understand that they also have a shelf life and they want to maximize it. There are players who want to only play for the money. So you have to kind of look at how you can avoid certain players. There are certain players that you make mistakes, and you realize halfway through that these are players whose cultures, whose ethics don't fit with the team. And, we find ourselves with very unpopular choices. And we might find ourselves with a certain couple of players that, the fans really think are amazing, but they have no clue of what's happening behind the scenes in terms of how you need to manage this guy.
I mean, I could do an entire episode on, because you've opened up this culture thing.
Yeah.
And I just got all this Ted Lasso thing happening inside. Right?
Yes.
Because, and then, when I see what's happening to Man City now, the patch that they're going through, and what Guardiola has been saying, I just wonder how important is culture within it. Because how much time are you spending in a year with them? Maybe a month, 2 months? I don't know.
So this is the thing, right? This is the other challenge, I guess, especially with a sport like Kabaddi, because you spend 2.5 months with them in season, and let's say a few weeks before season in your pre-season camp. But then they go off, and then you've got no concept of how to control them.
Yeah.
You can't control their diet, their workouts, or anything else, or their culture and who they're talking to. So they might be completely influenced by a bhai, chacha, mama, dada, papa, mama, whoever it is, to say, boss, idhar mat jao, udhar se paise le lo.
Wow.
There's all these different elements, right? So I do think that's why one of the reasons we came in at Elevate India Sports and Yuva Kabaddi series is to actually create a calendar for Kabaddi. So that the players also through the year are still earning money, they're still earning a livelihood, there's a pathway to Pro Kabaddi, but also players can be tracked, right? And there's enough and more tournaments through the year for them to continue to play as well. But to me, culture, again, culture is defined by the management, by the franchise, by the CEO, by the owner.
Wow.
And I think, thankfully, Ronnie's given me a free hand when it comes to building culture.
Sure.
It might take longer. That's a trade-off, right? Okay. You've seen it with Ted Lasso. They lose. And you have this kind of breakout moment where your players start to mature, where there's a buy-in to the culture, and where you finally get players that are buying into that culture. And I think that takes the longest time. I'm still finding that, right? And we're still finding the balance. And it will take long. And I told him, I said, we might have seasons where we're going to be finishing last or close to last. Thankfully, we're not. We've actually had a U-turn in the team, and I can't promise it'll continue, because we're still going to have to let go of certain players that might be of high net worth from a fan perspective, but we found just don't fit our team culture. And that's a very tough call to take when you know a certain player comes with a reputation, but actually what they're doing internally is actually spoiling the culture of the team. So,
like I said, there are implications of this pretty much across all team sports.
Of course. And I think it's all across work as well. I think today when I run a startup, I apply the same thing in terms of who I'm hiring. Whether it's someone who's in our core team, whether it's someone at a leadership group, the same thing applies in terms of the type of person you want to work with. And it's the kind of person that I want to associate myself in my friend circle now. Right? So you cut certain people out.
So let me ask you this, right? Because you've done this with people, 365 days a year, and you've done it with people 2.5 months in a year. What, is there even a trade-off between a performer and a team player? I think it's very rare to find both in one person. If it is, then great. Good for you.
Yeah.
How do you think about this?
There's a really good book that I would recommend everyone to read called The Captain Class.
Okay.
It's a brilliant book that actually talks about leadership qualities, right? And how every player needs to have leadership qualities, but also what to look for in a leader. And quite often they say the leader is your water carrier. He may not be your star player, but he's the guy that will do the dirt. He'll do the dirty work, right? He'll do stuff that no one else is willing to do for the sake of the team. Those are the kind of guys you want to try and identify, right? The guys who are not looking for the glory, but the guys who are looking to do the groundwork to make sure that the team actually succeeds. So if you start to look for certain character traits in players, I think that's where the flip starts to happen, right? And there's a big trade-off
Yeah.
because you need those star guys, but those star guys need to be molded.
Yeah.
And as long as you've got a leadership quotient around you that is molding those guys, then you're kind of still in a culture where it's malleable, a culture which is moldable, a culture where you're getting, let's say, 80% of good guys,
Okay.
and a couple of sour lemons can't ruin the rest.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get 5 sour lemons with star egos, then it's a tough one to build.
Very corporate feel to it also.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now the same question for players is now for sponsors. Like, how do you get sponsors? How do you, how easy or difficult is it to attract and then to retain sponsors also?
Very good question, because I think in today's market, I'll tell you, one of the biggest challenges also is that every second day there's a new league, right? And whether we like it or not, cricket still sells more than anything else. So whether there's a random Legends League or a random T10 or something else, it's eating into the pool of what a sponsor wants to spend on marketing in the year.
Yeah.
Now also timing of a league makes a big difference. Now the Pro Kabaddi window should, in my opinion, be fixed for that June, July to September window.
Post IPL and
Post IPL, monsoon, indoor sport, nothing else going on.
Yeah.
Viewership has been through the roof in those seasons. Everyone kind of knew that was their dedicated window.
Okay.
Now we've had a couple of seasons, whether it's an Asian Games year and that's why, or other reasons, the league has shifted it to October, November, December. By doing so, there's a few things therefore, and it's interesting to actually see this from this lens, right? One, prices go through the roof, hotels, because it's wedding season, flights, wedding season and everything else, and holidays and all that, through the roof. So your costs go up double almost. Next, all your sponsorship from a brand, and I've had very good, strong brands, like legacy brands of India, who want to come partner with us, who have said, you know what, unfortunately my marketing budget for the year is done. Because by that time, you've got now a Cricket World Cup somewhere, you've got a Women's Cricket World Cup somewhere, you've got an IPL that's happened, you've got some other league that's happened. So suddenly you get to the tail end of the year, by November, December, everything's been deployed, and suddenly you're done. Whereas if you're July, you're starting the year from March onwards, IPL is one, but straight out the IPL, it's PKL. And you start having these conversations with sponsors in March. And you're saying, you know what, guys, for those of you who don't have the money to spend on IPL, here's bang for buck. You're spending 1/10, you're getting 1/3 the viewership. And you know what? We'll go out of our way to make you happy.
Sure.
Right? And I think that's the second part, which is retention.
Okay.
I actually think for people who've come into Kabaddi, you'll see a lot of people continue on because the bang for buck value is so big. Right? And people are surprised by the same thing you said at the top. The energy in stadiums, what you're getting out of teams, what we want to do for partners as well, for the kind of engagement you get with fans through a Kabaddi season on social media, it's through the roof. So I think retention is very important, but I think getting that first taste of Kabaddi and convincing them to do Kabaddi, because people don't realize, when I go and tell people, guys, 300 million people are watching Kabaddi, they say, no way. They say, yaar, football is far more. I said, no. I said, combine all of football, which is La Liga, FIFA, World Cup, everything else, and put it all together, it's 106 million.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay, sure. Wow. Okay.
So, I mean, I've done enough and more pitch decks for my for our startup to now put all the numbers into perspective, right? And when you've got such numbers, numbers don't lie when it comes to data at the end of the day, right? So, Kabaddi has established itself as the second biggest sport in the country, and there's reason, therefore, to invest.
Crazy. Cost. Where does a franchise spend the most money? How do you guys ensure profitability?
Profitability is tough in every franchise. I think there's only 2 profitable leagues today. One is the IPL, one is Pro Kabaddi. Pro Kabaddi has its good years and bad years for a franchise. Last year was tough because, again, December season, costs went up double. Biggest costs are your franchise fee quite often, what you're spending on your player purse. And then what you're spending on operations, right? Logistics, hotels, flights, food, nutrition, supplements, all of that, player fees. So that sort of kicker, right? So roughly, I think a Pro Kabaddi franchise is spending between 15 and 20 crores per year. You're kind of breaking even, if not making a bit of a profit at the moment. In my opinion, and I think in every franchise's opinion, that should be double of what we're doing. I think there was obviously and it's much talked about by Ronnie himself and many others, that, obviously Mashal bought the rights to Pro Kabaddi, which sits inside Star. And therefore, unfortunately, the last tender of media rights, which the IPL saw a massive kicker, Kabaddi should have gone to 2x, 3x of what it was. Because it was housed in-house, the value of the media rights deal was was much lower. And,
Much lower,
there was one, while many picked up the tender document, there was one actual bid and it went to the in-house
In-house,
group.
okay. Yeah.
So I think that's where the value is maybe diminished.
Okay.
We hope that true value will be unlocked because if you look at numbers of viewership and everything else and all the
It's
other
all
metrics,
growing, yeah.
so I
For,
think
for how long has it been going on? It's been about 10 years now?
10 years.
Yeah, that's
10
what I
years. This
thought.
is season 11, now season 12 coming up. So for a league to successfully last 10, 12 years, it tells you that there's a lot of good going on. And that's a good thing.
So what's the ROI in owning a sports team? In general, across sports maybe,
Yeah.
and probably if Kabaddi, just an idea.
So I'll give you maybe a couple of other ones as well, right? Table tennis, chess.
Which you have,
loss making,
Yeah.
right? But again, table tennis we really value because the team that's there, Mr. Bajaj, Vita Dani, run the league very, very well, very tight runship. Yes, there's, minimal losses. But we think it's good to promote a sport like that, again, sports that need it. Ideal scenario, we would fund this from Kabaddi profits.
Okay.
Right? And I think that's what will eventually happen. We're moving into pickleball. So
High time. About time. Yeah.
And I think pickleball is a tricky one because this comes down to lack of a federation. So now there are 3 different leagues. So it was for us and for me to make a decision of which of the 3 to pick.
Okay.
Right? And now you look at what is franchise fee, who actually is going to get recognized by a body that could come in, where is their global recognition, where are the best players coming in. And I think best players is a big reason for an IPL to succeed.
Sure.
Best players is a big reason for Pro Kabaddi to succeed.
Sure.
Where you've got best players, a league succeeds.
Okay.
Football, one of the reasons that ISL is tough to watch is because the best players in the world are playing in the Premier League or everywhere else, right?
Yeah.
So pickleball, we're going with the Duper PWR League, which has Andre Agassi's stamp of approval. Best players in terms of all 3 leagues combined. I think the star players coming in here, so much higher ranked. So we're looking at pickleball next.
Okay.
But coming back to the
ROI question.
Yeah. Couple of things. One, if obviously like the case of the IPL, the broadcast deal goes 10x, which it should with Pro Kabaddi as well as it grows, hopefully becomes an Olympic sport in 36. Broadcast will become more. Bang for buck comes back there. You earn your massive chunk from broadcast. 2, and I think the longer play, whether it's even with other franchises, you're seeing valuations skyrocket at the 100 now with a lot of IPL teams buying in England. It's a flip as well, right? Let's say we bought a Pro Kabaddi team at 1.5 crores in 2014. Today, Pro Kabaddi teams are being valued between 180 to 200 crores, 150 to 200 crores.
Wow.
The last deal value, there was only one sale that happened, and perhaps that was a distress sale in some sense also, was roughly around the 100 crores mark.
Okay.
We've had offers to the tune of 180 plus, right? So you're already looking at a 1000x equivalent, right?
Crazy,
or 10,000x actually of sale value.
Sure.
So that's a flip.
Okay.
You buy a team today in pickleball, which today is this. In 10 years or 7 years from now, you're not paying franchise fee anymore. And you'd hope that the cost then and the revenue model actually takes care of the cost. So you're playing along, you're losing money. And that's what I think a lot of people need to understand. A lot of people will come in and say, I want to buy a franchise. But people have to understand, and credit to Ronnie for and every other franchise owner, you're losing a lot of money initially.
Yeah.
And it's a big risk.
Yeah, because for businessmen, it's an ego thing also, right? I own a sports franchise kind of a thing.
So you've got to be passionate. I think you can't expect returns early.
Yeah.
And that's why I always say for a league to succeed, you really need good franchise owners. Look at Pro Kabaddi, look at ISL, look at IPL. Fantastic stakeholders, fantastic franchise owners. When everything is rosy, all franchise owners are going to be getting along. But when shit hits the fan, for the lack of a better word, you want franchise owners who will not run away, who have the wherewithal to stay the course.
It's a very important point because Premier League has also faced this issue with with Abramovich and whatnot happening out there.
You want good stakeholders who are doing it also out of a passion, who have the money to say, you know what, this is not my be all and end all, who have the ability to say, I know there's going to be some bad years, but I'm with you.
That's very important. How do you evaluate success here? End of the year, every season, what matters?
Well, the first question I'm going to be asked by Ronnie is going to be P&L.
Okay.
And understandably so, because at the end of the day, your metric is what are your profits, what are your losses, right? If you've got losses, okay, why? What have you spent on? Is it just, are you blowing money on marketing or are you spending on player development? Right now, last year, we went to JSW's Inspire Institute of Sport. We ran a 40-day pre-season camp there, spent a bit extra on it, but to me, that's value. Because we gave our players the best possible chance to succeed.
Sure.
Right? And then you're saying, you know what? I can justify that cost. So I think justification of costs, I think, is going to have to come down to where your costs are going.
Yeah.
Is there a long-term viewpoint to it? Now, if today I want to go and open an academy at Mumba, and I'm finding land, creating infrastructure, tomorrow that might be justified because then I don't need to go to an Inspire Institute and pay them a certain fee to be housed for 50 days.
Yeah.
I might have to burn that money for the next 3 years.
Sure.
But 3 years later, I get my break even already from having my own academy set up with a gym, with a hostel, with whatever else
The
it
works,
might be.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
these are some of the costs that you look at and say, okay, this is a one-time cost, but
What
5
we
years down
call
the line,
capital expenditure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So if your capex today is worth it in 4 years' time,
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
But I think the response has to also be the biggest metric, success.
Yeah.
If you're spending all this money, you're finishing last.
Then it's not going to work. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, a sports franchise is based on success.
Yeah. And sports is tough now because you
And
can
this-
measure success so easily.
And there can only be one winner.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
You got 12 franchises, there's one winner.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
But I think you create your own metrics. For us, playoffs was a metric.
Major lessons so far. What has worked? What has not worked?
Wow. Major lessons from which lens will I?
Wear anyone that you want. Anyone that you're comfortable
I think major lessons, A is get the right people. Do not scrounge on the quality of people that you get. Whether this is on my personal life front, whether it's on the business front, whether it's from a startup front, really be wise with the people that you choose long term. And if you've chosen a direction, stick by it. Stay the course. To me, that is the only thing. There will be days where you're sitting in a loo crying about something. And there'll be days where, you know what, finally there's that, like I said earlier, that point which kind of just flips.
Yeah.
And you never know where that point is, how close you are to that point.
Yeah.
But you've really got to back yourself. You've got to back that you are doing something with conviction for a reason. Validate it along the way. And number 2, I would say park your ego.
Aha, okay. The famous Quincy Jones line from We Are the World. Yeah.
I
Park your ego at
truly
the door.
believe it.
Yeah.
I would have continued to chase my cricket dream
Wow.
if I didn't want to park my ego. It took time, I think. And I think that was the biggest reason to, believe that you have to park your ego, because I think don't waste time. Don't waste other people's time. Don't waste your parents' time and money. Don't waste your own time and money. I say this to people who talk to me about their kids playing sport or chasing a motorsport dream, which is an expensive sport. And I'm like, you know what, be realistic. If genuinely you don't think, have a tough discussion.
Yeah.
And that actually brings me to point number 3. Be prepared to have tough conversations.
Okay.
I credit Australia, and I spent 5 years there. There's a reason maybe why Greg Chappell didn't work in India, because they have a very direct way of speaking.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
We're not used to that.
I absolutely love it. They will tell you straight to your face, this was crap, this was good, you need to work harder on this.
Yeah.
This honestly was rubbish.
Yeah.
Now to us, we like a little bit of masala beta, aise mat kar, This was very good, beta.
Yeah.
And I've seen this in the corporate world. I've seen this as a broadcaster,
Yeah.
as a presenter, as a commentator. I've seen people being told, you are very good on air, yeah? Fantastic show. Next day or next month, they're chopped. And I'm thinking, you know what?
Crazy.
Just give them feedback that they actually deserve.
Yeah.
So give people direct feedback.
Yeah.
Let them deal with it, boss.
And that country is like that. I mean, you see the way they play cricket.
And our country's like this, where we say one thing to someone, you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about,
no, of
right?
course, yeah,
we
you
will say
see,
the
yeah.
most lovely things to someone's face,
Yeah.
but we're scared to give direct feedback.
Yeah.
And I actually think, as today's culture goes as well, people would much rather know, I would rather know, if I'm doing something wrong, tell me to my face, so that, I have the capability to change it.
Yeah.
Now, if after you tell me, I'm still incapable of changing me, sack me.
Crazy. I mean, in something that's so focused on performance,
Yeah.
if you're going to use baby gloves, to
Correct.
take someone through, then
Correct.
that's not going to help.
Correct. It's not helping anybody.
Yeah.
Because eventually you're going to face the brunt, right?
Yeah. And when you
And
say
you're setting
this,
them up for failure.
when you say this, that Pat Cummins' line just comes back to you, right? When he said that, I want to hear the stadium go silent.
Yeah.
And he didn't say it as a threat or
No.
anything.
It's a brutally honest line.
Yeah.
And it's a confident line.
Yeah.
So I always think actually the Aussies get a bad rap because they are seen as cocky and confident. But I'm like, sport is a battle of the mind and body.
Always.
If you're not having the battle in the mind
Yeah.
and you're not showcasing confidence,
Yeah.
what is your team going to take out of you? As a leader, if you're not instilling confidence in those guys around you, and I don't mean this just in sport.
Yeah.
As a leader in the corporate sense, if you're not taking tough calls, if you're not bringing confidence, sometimes fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
You might be absolutely nervous to play in front of 125,000 at a Narendra Modi stadium. But for you to come out and say, you know what, I want to silence this crowd, the rest of your team is going to say, man, that's the leader we want. We want to play for him.
Yeah, I mean, you're going against, in the home country, against a crowd of, 100,000 odd or maybe, and
against the biggest star quality team on the planet of superstars. So, it takes guts.
It also holds true across other sports. You see what Djokovic says.
Exactly.
When a lot of people find it abrasive, rude, but look at the guy.
He backs it up. As long as you can back up your words with performances. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong. There's a fine line. I'm not saying be arrogant, ever.
No, obviously.
There has to be humility in the way you do things. Arrogance and confidence are two very different things. Walk that line very, very carefully. But I do think that we have to be brutal and brutally honest with feedback. I think it's something that we lack in our culture because we're soft.
I mean, it's also, what you said is obviously right, because it reminds me of another famous scene in this movie called Whiplash.
Right.
J.K. Simmons.
Yep.
And he says that the most harmful two words in the English language are good job. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
It's crazy how true that is, in many fields.
Yeah.
So, well, sports in India, how have leagues such as yours helped in making sports like Kabaddi, TT, chess, mainstream? I mean, these are always there. And it's also been, each sport is very unique in its own way, right?
Yeah.
Kabaddi is indoors, TT is indoors, chess is also, I mean, all three are indoors as such, but both are very different viewing experiences and playing experiences. How have leagues such as yours helped make this mainstream?
I actually laugh about it because it seems like we've gone from a Kabaddi court, which is physical and a large space, to table tennis, which is physical and mental, to a slightly smaller table. And then we've gone to chess, which is purely mental, on a smaller chessboard. So we're kind of moving down from physical to mental and going down in size. We're going back up with pickleball as well. But I think each one is different. I'll come to also why the Yuva Kabaddi series exists. Because I think you need the stepping stones. Cricket, for example, has a Ranji trophy, has a Syed Mushtaq Ali trophy, has Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, etc., going off and playing after the IPL, the entire team goes and plays a tri-series, plays a bilateral series. Kabaddi doesn't have that. Right? So Kabaddi after PKL doesn't go on to play multiple bilateral series or whatever. So for me, as a startup founder, I said, you know what? There's 2.5 months of Kabaddi that are amazing to watch, but there's 9.5 months of the calendar that's open. Right? Why don't we try and work to fill that? And actually create an organized ecosystem of Kabaddi. There's a random tournament that will happen in Haryana. There's a, sir, aaj ek 10 lakh ka tournament ho raha hai Karnataka mein. But this is all like random, last minute, players come from everywhere.
Sure.
I'm saying let's organize the ecosystem. So firstly, I think organize the ecosystem ground up. Cricket has that. Kabaddi, we are building that at Elevate, and we're building it in various ways, from a youth system, which is Yuva Kabaddi series, to TNKL, which will be the Tamil Nadu Kabaddi League, and multiple state federation leagues like that will come up. Table tennis, again, struggles because it's not a mass sport. It is a social sport. It's seen as a social sport, but again, it's the elite which are very good.
Why are you saying that? Look at what China did with table tennis.
I agree.
Those guys are like,
But again, you have to dedicate you have to know that you have to make a full push. And credit
I love
to
TT.
I love it as well. And credit to Vita Dani and the entire team, because they're saying, look, it's not even a physical sport like, say, athletics, etc., where India may not genetically be brilliant. Here, why are we not winning? Right? And look at it now. We're on the up. We've got multiple girls and guys who are now on the up. We're no longer relying on a single Sharat Kamal to go out and win us a medal somewhere. There's a whole host of names.
You've got Diya Chitle. Who's a Bombay.
Absolutely. Exactly. You've got Diya Chitle. You've got so many others that are coming in. Satyan, Manav, so many others, right? So excellent to see this sort of rise of TT. But ecosystem again is the play. They're getting more contenders. There's a WTT contender now. It will be in Chennai. He was in Goa last time around. So again, you need someone to push it. Come to a chess, again, individual sport, doing a brilliant job. I'm finding it hard, even though we have a team in the league. I think that's a tough sell as a league and franchises, because again, I can understand it. From a corporate, he's saying, why do I want to come and sponsor a league team when that same 50 lakhs or 25 lakhs or 30 lakhs I can give to a Gukesh or Vidit or somebody else, and I've got the entire exposure for the year.
Oh, so that's the equation.
I can understand it.
I didn't think of it that way.
Correct.
Okay.
Versus my counter to that is, yes, but if you come to our team, I'm giving you Harika, Humpy, Vidit, Maxime Vache-Legrave, and someone else who comes into our team
Yeah.
at the same cost.
Yeah.
But it's for a limited period of time.
Sure.
Right? So you can understand it. Again, this is why leagues have to be long enough to hold good.
Okay.
But the stance is that you have to create an ecosystem. And I think if you don't have what cricket has, which is a year-round exposure of a sport, it's very hard to suddenly expect that for 2.5 months, a brand will turn up, fans will turn up, you'll have engagement. And that's why, for me, the Yuva Kabaddi series, building out Elevate is very, very important, because until Kabaddi is in the mindset of the fan the entire year, you can't expect 2.5 months of a fan to be invested in a sport. And you want fans to go from a viewing fan to a participative, engaged fan.
Okay. Your future, I mean, what's happening in both the businesses?
Exciting stuff. Mumba is taking new steps. As I said, we're entering pickleball. Pro Kabaddi, I want to see this grow. We've actually just started our youth wing, which is called Yuva Mumba. So that will come into the equation soon enough. We want to really nurture young talent. I want to spend a lot more time doing scouting, getting young talent in, and being able to nurture them from financial literacy, which I will come to you for advice, by the way.
Thank you.
On the mental side of sport, on how to be a better person in general, and also match that to longevity of a playing career, so that you take the right calls. Help them with temptation that might come from external sources, things like that. That's on one side of Mumba. On the Elevate side, we're in the middle of a fundraise at the moment.
Nice.
The reason we're raising funds actually is to give back more to the community of players. Actually, I think a lot of people may not know, and might be the first time I'm actually talking about this publicly. We've perhaps invested into the Kabaddi ecosystem, and I'm not talking about elite, into the youth Kabaddi and Kabaddi ecosystem with players, officials, local federations, etc. About 25 to 28 crores in the last 30 months alone.
A lot of money.
And thankfully as a startup, we've broken even where we're not losing money, but most of our money, the majority of it, is going back into the ecosystem. I think that's something that we want to keep doing. One of the reasons we're raising funds is to launch new IPs, find a way that players can have their livelihoods earned from Kabaddi through the year, not just from Pro Kabaddi. And so we can create sort of stronger pathways for them as well. So very exciting times. Got some very exciting potential investors coming on board. So fingers crossed. Hopefully the next time we chat, we'll be in a better place.
And isn't this all India, right? Because I remember
Exactly.
Rajdeep Sadesai had written this book about how the India sporting team has changed.
Yeah.
You look at, somewhere in the 80s, it was basically the metro cities. And now it's the exact reverse.
Correct.
Like you've got, and the stories that come out, yaar, sab mein to rone aa jata hai. Whether it's a Yashasvi Jaiswal, whether it is whoever. Like you can actually, you must be feeling this when you go out, right?
So I'm glad you brought this up. I'll bring you a lovely story, right? There was a young boy, Arjun Rathi, right? Comes from Uttarakhand. Played our Yuva Kabaddi series. He played for one of the Uttarakhand teams, and therefore the team itself didn't do well, didn't advance further. We recognized that this boy is special. We moved him to one of the Pondicherry teams, the South teams. I'm not sure if it was Chennai or the Pondicherry team, one of our stronger teams. So the player went there. Now, as a result, he continued to perform. He got exposed in the next round of the tournament, got spotted and scouted by Pro Kabaddi teams. In the auction, this boy who was maybe earning max, let's say, 1 lakh rupees, maybe 50,000 rupees a year from Kabaddi, is today on a 45 lakh contract. For 3 months of Kabaddi. Right? He'll go and get a government job, I'm sure. His life changes. His entire community changes. When he went back to his village after the auction of Pro Kabaddi, there was a 2-kilometer procession to welcome him back.
Victory lap kind of. Oh, man.
Now, think about the power of that.
And what good it does to him, no?
Him, his entire community today, and he said, sir, thank you for giving us a platform to have this life. And he said to us, kids in our village today no longer want to only do what their parents did. They don't want to only be daily wage laborers or farmers. They look at me and they want to be a Kabaddi player.
Crazy.
Right? Now you're changing communities, you're changing aspirations, and you're changing actual value of a community. Same thing happened with a young player, Sudhakar in Tamil Nadu. Similar story. And his social media, he was an icon. Right? He had social media presence already when he came to Yuva Kabaddi. Because he was kind of this village cult hero. From Yuva, he's gone from, let's say, 25,000 followers to 80,000 followers on social media. Now he's a pro Kabaddi player. He's giving back to the community. And it's, these are, I'm telling you, there are dime a dozen stories like this.
Yeah,
so
no, I mean,
it's crazy.
Because you're affecting culture at the ground level, and there's no
Yes.
bigger change than
Yes.
that,
Yes.
There was one question that kind of slipped my mind, but I want to ask that to you now, because when I had mentioned China and, what was called ping pong or table tennis or whatever, it also reminded me of that scene in Chak De India where I think when the team comes into the stadium and you then confront the state in which it is in, and I think Chak De is 20 years old maybe? 2004 maybe?
Yeah.
What does the government need to do? Just a simple question.
Sometimes just make it easy. Sometimes stop stopping things. I think when people are doing good work, and I don't think it's just government, it is others as well. There are federations, there are individuals.
Sorry, when I meant government, I just meant everything that's not private
Bureaucracy.
or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So I think when there are administrators, bureaucracy, all of this, sometimes don't try and make life difficult for people who are trying to do good. We faced actually a lot of pushback from various sides.
I'm sure you would have.
And it was because we came looking like a threat to certain people. But then when you start to realize that, guys, no one else is doing anything. And here comes a set of people trying to do good work, but you're only trying to undo it. And you're only trying to stop it. Because there's a political scenario to someone else, or someone else wants power, or someone else wants a payout out of something else.
Oh my God.
And I'm thinking, guys, you're affecting the players eventually, right? Here's a set of guys that finally are doing something for the players, creating an ecosystem that you never created, and yet you want to try and stop this because of your selfish needs. To me, if federations, if governments, if whoever it is, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of good also.
Okay.
I will honestly say that today, in 2025, there's a lot of people supporting sport.
Okay.
Look at a state like Orissa. Look at what they've done for hockey in Orissa. What they've therefore done for Pan India there. Look at entities like a JSW or an OGQ or Go Sports working with federations. At the same time, look at a sport like badminton. They went out and won the Thomas Cup, which is to me one of the biggest feats in Indian sport. That would have been the perfect time to relaunch the badminton league. They didn't. Why? Because God knows what.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, if you just came together and put your personal differences and personal ambitions aside and did things for the good of a sport. Tennis also, similar thing, right? It's in a state of flux, right? And Indian tennis therefore suffers. You have to realize that ultimately the players are suffering, and ultimately if you really truly have ambitions to make India a sporting nation, a sporting nation isn't just getting one Neeraj Chopra who's done it all on his own, or one Deepa Karmakar who by her own faith, her own work ethic, her own ability to create a beam in a house and practice, or a Karun Chandhok who comes through the rut and has to tell the government that motorsport is a sport and has to push through.
He had to do that.
We can do a separate podcast on that, right? But I'm saying you are trying to stop someone who's on their way to fight. Why make people fight the system?
Sure.
Enable them. Be enablers rather than people who have to fight you. And I think that would be my only plea, and you can hear it in my voice.
No, I can.
It is a plea of passion to say, guys, when people are doing good, see the good rather than seeing the one aspect that might, be somewhere tough. And enable them.
I just don't get this vision for grandeur. Like, we want to host this, we want to host that, we want to host this, we want to... Karo yaar. I don't know whether that'll help or not. Honestly, we had already one fiasco with the Asian Games.
Do it. I'm just saying, do it well.
Yeah, do it well.
Yeah.
And if you think that you can have that kind of a vision, great, have a vision. But also, this...
I think that's why I think it has to be private-public together.
Yeah.
We can't put everything on the government. Because the government is actually doing a lot with Top Scheme, with all of these things also. They're doing a lot for the athletes, right? But I think when the private and public come together, the force that can do, whether it's infrastructure, which the government is doing, whether it's, athlete management, which the private sector actually should do better than the public sector, because I think you get athletes and the right people administering it.
Sure.
So if you work together, private and public, I think that is a perfect marriage. Match made in heaven. We see this in the UK. We see it in China. China, I guess, a bit more regimented. But we see in Australia, in the UK and stuff, when they, go after a sport, they do it together. Sure. I think that's the sort of feel we need.
You mentioned OGQ, and I just realized that, and you're someone who's from the ecosystem, who was a player, who was a cricketer who's now come into the business arena. Not many like you. Okay, but when you mentioned OGQ, I thought of Viren
Viren,
Raskin,
yeah.
okay, from my school,
Yeah.
Bandra
Great
boy,
guy.
etc. Great guy.
I have a lot of
exactly.
respect for him.
Yeah. You think that more players doing this would help?
Players who understand, I think, the business side of sport and administration. And that's why I think I didn't, sitting here, I didn't take up the Mumba job when I didn't feel confident enough.
Okay.
So I think there comes a time where you also understand the business side of sport. And I think you need the right people who see both lenses. And there are people actually like that who are running, let's say, JSW or running OGQ or running Go Sports. People who've played sport, understand what an athlete needs, how an athlete thinks.
Yeah.
And therefore, what a corporate also has to think.
Huh.
So you have to also put on the corporate hat,
Yeah.
right? You can't just say player needs this and therefore corporate de do paisa bhar lo.
Yeah.
You know, it can be misused very easily.
It just reminded me of that, very ugly scene that was playing out in the last IPL of a certain, business person taking a certain
captain.
cricketer to
Yeah.
task.
Yeah.
Didn't look good. Just doesn't have the right optics.
It doesn't, and I've seen this across sports, right? And you can understand for a corporate, they are running it also. Exactly. They're running it like a corporate which, hey, I've put 7,000 crores in.
P&L and...
Exactly. I put 7,000 crores in. I expect a certain level of performance. I'm not getting it. But you forget that in sport, there's a lot of uncontrollables.
Obviously.
A ball could kick off somewhere else. There could be an unbelievable catch. There could be a run out. You can't control things. It's unscripted drama. And you have to understand that's part and parcel of. Which is why I say I think you have to get someone who understands sport and understands the business side. And also as a team owner, I think there's a line where if you've hired XYZ to coach, to be a CEO, to be a guy who's running your team as a team manager, set that boundary and say, you know what, either I'm going to sack them.
Correct.
Or you know what, I'm going to support them.
Yeah.
So say I gave you my example, right? With Ronnie, he's been very good to work with because he says, you know what, sporting decisions are yours. If you screw them up, you're accountable. If you do well, you're accountable.
Yeah.
But when it comes to accountability, that's when you pull someone up there. He's not telling me how to do,
Obviously.
who to hire and who not to hire and which players to take.
Yeah.
Now, then you're thinking, then why are you hiring me?
Yeah.
If you've hired someone, either have trust in your hiring process or you do the job yourself.
Lines are drawn and respected.
And it should be.
Okay, now my favorite question, okay, because this is, for the kids out there or the parents out there who are wondering, ki, acha, abhi kya, what next? What kind of job opportunities exist in the sports ecosystem and how can young professionals get involved?
Firstly, don't think that you only need to be an athlete today.
Yeah.
There are so many job opportunities in sport, from a marketing perspective, from engineering, data analytics and being, data analyst for a team, hospitality, engineering, I mentioned when it comes to motorsport and things like that as well.
Medical.
You've got medical, right? Sports scientists, you've got physiotherapists, trainers, nutritionists, psychologists. You've got so many opportunities in sport. Sales and marketing, right? Business development, CEOs are needed. So if you've got a passion for sport,
Sure.
honestly, you can pick and choose. I've not done a master's degree, by the way.
Yeah.
I did a double degree in international marketing and management, but I lived a life in sport. I think sport teaches you a lot.
Yeah.
And I think you don't have to, a lot of people ask me, sir, do I have to go and only do a sports management degree somewhere? I said, firstly, where are those top-notch sports management degrees in India? We don't have them. So do what you have to do. If you need to keep your options open, do your normal BCom, BBA, whatever else it might need to be. Do a specialized master's if you need to. Wherever you are though, I think today there are enough opportunities in the sporting ecosystem for non-athletes.
Sure.
So take a stab at it.
Yeah.
And if you're passionate, same thing. Go whole hog, commit.
Okay. And now another thing for, and I know because I have friends whose kids were into sports and then had to unfortunately come out of it because either it gets too expensive, which it is, okay, or the performance probably doesn't sustain, which also is very real.
Of course.
Okay. And third, you just kind of, unfortunately, I don't like to use the word, but just give up.
Yeah.
And you realize कि यार आप पढ़ाई करो.
Yeah.
पढ़ाई करने में क्या
बैकअप तो चाहिए.
बैकअप है एंड पढ़ाई करके कहीं ना कहीं नौकरी तो मिल जाएगी ना यार. 365 days you're sorted.
Yes.
Sports में आप ये करो. So what's your thing to them? Because I just realized that it doesn't have to be binary.
I was just going to say.
Please.
They can work together.
Yeah, go on.
I actually think when I was playing my best cricket and when I was committing to it in Australia, I was doing my undergrad there. I actually thought my studies got better because I think your discipline, your time management, your focus, sport teaches you. You can't be late. If I was late to training, I'd be running laps. I'd be sitting out of that session, whatever it might be, right? So it teaches you various things. And I think that's the one lesson to parents. I don't have kids. If I did have kids, I would say I would encourage him to play sports and find You find your balance.
Yeah.
I need you to get me 80% or it might be
Whatever the
95% or
number
whatever
is.
the number
Yeah,
is
yeah.
in your head, right? But you can do it with balance.
Yeah.
And it's up to you to figure out how you need to time manage.
Yeah.
Now I'll start curbing little things here and there. I don't think you need to get to a stage where you remove all playtime. And I'm not saying everyone has to be a professional sportsman. Look, like you said, if you've got a kid who's not good enough to play professionally, it's okay. But let him play and enjoy himself.
Yeah.
Because the thrill you get from sport, still learning how to lose and learning how to win at an amateur level.
Yeah.
I played paddle this morning with 3 guys who are not professional sportsmen.
Yeah.
But we still had a really animated match.
Yeah.
They hated losing. I hated losing one set. They hated losing, whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's competitive.
It's competitive.
It's fun. Yeah.
That's all. And those competitive juices transfer to your workplace, transfer to you personally, where you don't like to lose, you don't like to come out of a deal on the wrong side, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So I would just say play.
And also, you don't have to give up sports you might give
Way
it up
of
as
life.
a player,
Yes.
but you could pursue it as a career.
Case in question. I had to give it up as a player, and it's my biggest regret in life. But I still every day play some sport or the other, whether it's golf, whether it's paddle, whether it's tennis, whether it's pickleball, whether it's something else. I live a life in sport, and I am happy to, and that's why it keeps you active. Do it with your kids.
Yeah, you watch Gran Turismo, yeah.
Yeah.
If anything else, just watch it and see how that guy just goes from
Correct.
your Xbox and all that, and I sometimes I wonder why people have this problem with that with the PS or an Xbox. I think it's
It's fine as long as you balance it also with
Exactly.
more. Don't just do that
Yeah.
for 12 hours a day.
So now, since you're a very multifaceted person and you've done a lot of things, what skill or ability from your broadcasting days helps you as a CEO today?
Seeing sport from a bird's eye view. I think it's very, very nice to look at the nuances of sport as a commentator and a presenter. And I get to interact with some of the most brilliant minds across sport, whether it be in the world of cricket, like a Kumar Sangakkara or an Anil Kumble or anyone else from the world of cricket, to administrators, to a interview you may have done with Rajvardhan Singh Rathore when he was sports minister, to you take such little, and if you do, and I always like to take little notes after to sort of just recollect things. I think the interactions you get to have as a broadcaster,
Sure.
You can't, like this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and we catch up before this podcast or after, there's little tidbits that you take with you. Right, and I think these are really valuable insights that you carry into being a co-founder, a better person, a CEO, whatever else it might be.
Is the boardroom different from the sports arena?
It is. It is, whether you like it or not. But I think you can bring elements of that into it, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's creating culture.
Yeah.
You don't need to go in with a stiff upper lip. You don't need to create a culture of wearing a suit and a tie. You can bring really nice aspects of sport into a boardroom, really nice aspects of a boardroom into sport.
My last question is always, what book are you reading? You already gave a recommendation. I think that was Capital.
The Captain Class.
Class.
I will also give you another book, which I think for me, I always look back on as the book that brought me out of my rut in 2010.
Okay.
And that is The Compassionate Samurai.
Wow.
It's a beautiful book. For anyone that is just sort of looking inward, looking to understand how to run a better life. It's a beautiful book that teaches you about values and ethics and how to be a samurai, a good values-driven person.
Okay, so Compassionate Samurai and
The Captain Class.
Captain Class and Compassionate Samurai.
I also love the psychology of money, down your alley, but...
No. That's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, these two sound, honestly, for someone who does this, these two sound more exciting. What else is happening? I mean, just last question. What sport are you watching? Whether it's Premier League or Formula.
I watch...
F1 hasn't started, but... Okay, top three. Chalo, top three.
I watch a lot of golf, oddly. When I didn't play golf, I used to watch it to fall asleep. After I
Oh,
started
come
playing...
on, yaar.
I'm telling you, after I started playing golf, I love it. So I watch a lot of golf. I've subscribed to various methods of watching global sport everywhere. I love basketball. I love tennis. Honestly, unfortunately, whether you like it or my wife likes it or not, from when I'm in the morning to when I'm on a drive today in the afternoon to Thane, I'll be watching Sri Lanka take on Australia in a test match. I'm watching sport 24/7, not because it's my work, but because I just, I'm a sports nuffy.
I mean, between the first two that you mentioned, I prefer golf because I know golf is it's like tennis, a very solo kind of a thing, and it takes like ages.
And you can never win. That damn ball is just sitting there on its own. You can't blame anybody but yourself.
I tried this somewhere where I'd gone on a bunch of friends. I can't even hit the ball. So,
I can do that, but unfortunately, you you can't blame elements, right? You
Yeah.
can't blame anything.
Yeah.
That ball hasn't moved. Your body has, and it's clearly moved in the wrong direction because you've intended to hit it there, and it's gone there. And you're like, what have I done wrong?
And both the sports in India, come on, they're nowhere. I mean, I think
Yeah,
you have
sadly.
we had one Aditi friend.
Yeah, but no, we've got
golf?
Anirban is doing a great job on the Live Tour, on the Live Golf Tour.
He's part of Live already.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's doing a fantastic job there.
Yeah.
Brilliant finishes. He's a great, actually, ambassador of the sport. Shubhankar, Anirban, Aditi.
Not a cheap sport by any measure.
Diksha Dagar.
At all.
But the flip is the minute you get that tour card on the Asian Tour or the European Tour or the PGA Tour, of course, a different level, your life changes.
Crazy.
So.
And on that note of life-changing, folks, that's it. Probably one of our longest ever Paisa Vaisa episode, but good Lord, what a whole lot of fun that was.
Thank you.
My guest, Suhail Chandhok, co-founder of Elevate India Sports and its popular Yuva Kabaddi series, CEO of Mumba. Suhail, what can I say? Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
No, thank you. Just a lovely freewheeling chat.
Yeah.
I love talking about life and sport, and when all of it comes together with a lovely host, that's great.
Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Anupam.
In whatever sports you play, in all your corporate ventures, and thank you for doing this.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.